Part 2. If you guys haven't seen Part 1, I'm going over all the movies I saw during the summer of 2021 that were released in the summer of 2021, I should say. Let's just jump into it. Next. Sorry guys, I just saw the next movie I'm gonna review. So the next movie I'm gonna review is no other than F9, The Fast Saga. Dom and the crew must embark on an international journey to find the terrorist that turns out to be Dom and Mia's brother. Holy mackerel, how is the Fast and Furious team gonna find themselves getting out of this one? Yeah, I saw Fast 9. I'm not proud of it. I've actually never seen a movie from this franchise before. Shame on me. I've never seen any of the Fast and Furious movies. This is the first time I watch a Fast and Furious movie, and hot damn, what an introduction. So just from an outsider's point of view, someone who's never seen the Fast and Furious movies, all I'm aware of are the memes. The memes that are Dom always saying the word family. Family is always used in this franchise. Stuff like, oh, they should go into outer space in the next movie. Lo and behold, you watch F9, and it's full of the word family, and they go into outer space. Guys, this is no coincidence. The internet, Reddit, 4chan, all of the message boards out there, you should be proud of yourselves because you at home, you who posted those memes, should be credited as a co-writer of Fast and Furious 9. This movie was basically all of the memes I saw on the internet about the Fast and Furious franchise put into a film. I don't think there was even writers on this film. I think they took like a AI robot and took all the memes from the internet and gave it to the AI robot and said make a script, and the robot made a script. That's how I think F9 was written. So I can't even be really mad at this movie because I don't even see it as a real movie. I see it as like 1-2 hour long meme. If that makes any sense. I'm starting to convince myself that I actually like this movie now for what it is. It's a very meta movie, I guess. There's even a scene where Tyrese is always saying, oh, we can't die, we're like superheroes. One thing I didn't know about this franchise, because I'm not familiar with this franchise, I didn't know how poor Vin Diesel was at acting. When it comes to these movies, I've seen Vin Diesel do some good performances. The Iron Giant, Saving Private Ryan. This franchise, though, the dude is not acting. He's just looking like confused like this. And he'll say something under his breath. Hey, little guy, why don't you come over say grace with the family? He's not acting in this. It's very poor acting. But like I said, this movie is about family, and there's some family drama that's brewing. Vin Diesel's brother, what's his name in the movies, is in the movie, and he's played by John Cena! Or as I like to call him, John Pina. Get it? Because he doesn't recognize Taiwan as its own country. Okay, jokes aside now. When I learned John Cena was going to play Vin Diesel's brother, I was like, in what world? John Cena and Vin Diesel do not look related whatsoever. There's not even an inkling of resemblance. And John Cena can't act in this movie, much like Vin Diesel. I will say all of the performances in here are pretty bad. This really felt like a movie. I felt like I was watching a 5-year-old with Hot Wheels and just smashing the Hot Wheels together with his hands. It felt like a 2-hour-long version of that. But can I fault the movie? The movie is like becoming Crank 2, slowly but surely. And Crank 2 is one of the greatest all-time action movies. I just wish the directing style was as crazy as the script. If the directing style was as crazy as the script, just like Crank 2, then I would have a bit more respect for the movie. But it kind of takes itself seriously and it kind of doesn't. Can we just talk about the space scene for 1 second? Let's just talk about the space scene. So, in case you guys didn't know, Ludacris and Tyrese, at the end of this movie, they have to destroy a satellite. So what do? Do they send a missile into space to destroy the satellite? Fuck no, they don't, because that would be too easy. Instead, they strap a rocket to the car and decide that they're gonna crash themselves into the satellite. Like, why not fucking just send a missile to the satellite? I don't get it. Why did people have to be riding a shitty car? A fucking, like a used Dodge Challenger? Guys, I don't know what's up with this movie, but, I mean, whatever. There's also a scene where there's like an army of people coming and Dom is fighting them all and he's doing some freaking kung fu, destroying everyone, kicking everyone's ass. And then when he's outnumbered, he takes these 2 chains that are tied to the ceiling and then forces the ceiling down onto the herd of people. I mean, what the... This movie is crazy. Can we just take a second to acknowledge something? So... this year, 2021, is the year of the billionaire space race, okay? You had the Virgin guy, what's his name? Bronson, whatever his name is. He went to outer space, and then Jeff Bezos and the old girl and the young guy, they went into outer space. Can we just acknowledge, in this year where billionaires are going into outer space, Tyrese and Ludacris went higher up into orbit than Jeff Bezos. That's awesome. Yes! There we go. This is what I want to see. Tyrese and Ludacris should be on the next Blue Origin flight. Can we start that GoFundMe? Can we make a GoFundMe for Ludacris and Tyrese to go into outer space next time? Guys, do a GoFundMe. Someone go do that GoFundMe. This wasn't a really serious review, but the movie isn't all that serious, so fuck it. Whatever. Next movie. I'm done talking about Fast and Furious 9. By the way, this wasn't at my will. I went because a friend dragged me. Okay? Just like what happened with, what was the Forever Purge. That was my excuse for the Forever Purge. This is my excuse for F9. Okay, moving on to the next movie for real now. Next movie I'm going to talk about is Zola. Now, I did a written review on my channel. I was doing written reviews for a while because sometimes I don't have time to film myself and edit the video, and sometimes me and Jacky are busy and we can't really edit, and I'll watch more movies than I can edit and film. So I decided to start doing written reviews. However, I didn't know this. When I put something in the community tab on YouTube, because I'm not monetized, people don't get notified about it. So I don't think many people saw my review. And that's okay, I'll just sum up what I said right here. Zola is about a stripper named Zola that embarks on a wild road trip to Florida with her newfound friend. So the synopsis of the movie, the premise of the movie is kept under wraps. It's a pretty low-key movie. But this movie was actually based on a Twitter thread by someone called Isaiah King. So this stripper called Isaiah King, aka Zola, did this long Twitter thread of this story, and they decided to take that and adapt it into a movie. And a lot of people in my circle of friends, I don't know as much on the internet, but in my circle of friends, people are like, they're making a movie based on a Twitter thread? Huh, what's up with these Zoomers, man? They can't make original movies, they have to make movies based on Twitter threads? Let me just say something to that. I know somewhere out there, there's probably some author or some screenwriter that sat down in a public restroom and looked at the stall and saw some graffiti, and that was their inspiration to make a movie, okay? If a Twitter thread inspires you to make a movie, go for it. If you feel like it's a good story, go for it. I remember a few years ago, Kevin Smith made a horror movie called Tusk, and his inspiration for that was basically this podcast that he did. And he decided to take that podcast episode and turn it into a movie. So this is 2021. There's different means of giving information out there, whether it's social media or podcasting or YouTube. And if that information gets to you through that method and it inspires you to make a film, go for it. I don't have any objections to it. The problems I have with this movie are not related to the fact that it's based on a Twitter thread. You want to know why? I'll tell you why right now. Because I'm not a boomer. Haha! I wanted to like this movie very much. I really went into the theater hoping this was a good movie. This was one of the first movies I saw in theaters post-pandemic, and I was really craving seeing that good indie movie in theaters. As much as I wanted to like it, this wasn't really my thing. Despite it being A24. You guys out there, you know, I'm a big sucker for A24. I'll like basically everything they do, but Zola was not really my cup of tea. The biggest problem I had with Zola is the fact that it lacks a bit of a voice. And there's some stylistic decisions that are done in this movie, some that are very not common in your mainstream movies, much like you would expect in an A24 movie. But they didn't really feel like they progressed the story. They didn't really feel necessary. One of those stylistic decisions was that every time there was a direct quote from the Twitter thread, they would put the little Twitter burp that does like beep boop. Or I can't emulate it because I went through puberty and my voice isn't high-pitched enough. But yeah, they would put that little Twitter bird sound effect every time a character would quote the Twitter thread. And that's cool for the first 4 times. But this movie at a point was just like beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, beep boop. And I was like, holy mackerel, I'm getting a bit of a headache here. Just stuff like that. There's like a reoccurring line in this movie where people are like, let me tell you a story. And I don't know why. I feel like that story just never came. I feel like the story was a bit too tame. I didn't feel like it was outrageous enough. And maybe it's because the style wasn't all that cinematic. When there were scenes that were supposed to be terrifying, the lighting remained normal, the camera work remained normal, the music remained normal. I feel like there was not a lot of directing in here, and everything was presented in a pretty matter-of-fact way. I had a problem with the character of Zola herself. I think Taylor Page is a good actress. My problem isn't with Taylor Page. It's more with the writing and directing of her character. I feel like she wasn't given much to do in this story besides being wide-eyed and being like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on? This is her face throughout the whole movie. When you look at the original Twitter thread by Isaiah King, she really has a distinct voice. And when she does that Twitter thread, the reason why it went viral wasn't necessarily because of what she was saying. I feel like it's because she had such a unique voice. I read the Twitter thread after I saw the movie, and she has such a brash, matter-of-fact, just like sassy tone to her where she just doesn't give a fuck about what she's saying. And to put a tweet like this on social media so everyone can see, you kind of have to be a loud personality to do that. And I feel like Taylor Page's performance didn't really reflect that. And that's what I mean by this movie kind of lacked a voice versus that Twitter thread had a voice. That Twitter thread is basically like every family member has like that uncle or that cousin who's a really good storyteller, and as soon as he tells a story, everyone drops everything and listens. That's basically Isaiah King in that Twitter thread. This movie kind of lacked that. I wish it did have that. This movie overall wasn't all that memorable to me, and I was really wishing I liked it more. I will say, I'll give the movie props for having a killer soundtrack. When that Run the Jewel song started playing, I was all about that shit. I was in the theater. I was literally the only person in the theater, by the way. I felt so bad for the projectionist because he had to do his job just so I can watch the movie by myself. And when that scene came on, I was all alone, and I was about to scream, RTJ! No, I didn't do that. Alright, next movie now. Staying on the topic of A24, I watched the movie Val. Val is a documentary centering on the daily life of actor Val Kilmer, featuring never-before-seen footage spanning over 40 years. What are my thoughts on Val Kilmer? I'm a movie guy. This is a documentary. It should be up my alley. What are my thoughts on Val Kilmer? I like Val Kilmer. He seems like a chill dude. He's a bit like a Keanu Reeves, but back in the 90s. By that I mean, is he the best actor out there? No. But when you see him in a movie, you're just like, it's Val. I especially like him in Top Gun, obviously, and I like him in Batman Forever. Batman Forever, by the way, there's this clip that always makes me laugh, and I'll show it here. It's the clip where I think he makes out with Nicole Kidman or something like that, and there's just this shot of him looking out the window, and he does like this goofy smile, and he's just like, and they kind of addressed that in this movie, that he had a really tough time acting through the Batsuit. And that, I don't know why, that clip from Batman Forever always stuck out to me. And for him to say that he had such difficulty acting through the Batsuit, it makes a lot of sense now why that looked so goofy. But after watching this documentary, at first I just thought of him as like a good actor that's kind of cozy. You go see him, you're like, Val Kilmer. I kind of have a newfound respect for this guy now. The reason being is because I feel like when it comes to acting, I don't know who told me this, but a cobbler becomes a cobbler because they like making shoes, you know? A tailor becomes a tailor because they like making clothes. An actor becomes an actor because they like themselves. That's like a quote that always stuck with me. And I feel like Val Kilmer is a bit not like that. I feel like he's a guy who definitely just loves the craft. I feel like there's very few actors that are like that in Hollywood. A lot of them is out of ego that they pursue acting. Val Kilmer is not that, and that's why what I mean that I found newfound respect for Val Kilmer. It was really refreshing to see an actor just talk about their craft and dive into that craft. The one thing I thought was extremely heartbreaking about this movie, so for those of you who don't know Val Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer and he had to get a tracheotomy, and for that reason he can't really act anymore because he no longer has a voice. And the one thing that this movie does, the one decision it does, and it makes it truly heartbreaking, is that they have Val Kilmer's son do the narration of this movie. And Val Kilmer's son sounds exactly like Val Kilmer sounded in his early career. When Val Kilmer's son tells the story, it's almost like as if Val Kilmer himself is telling the story. And you forget that the son is doing the narration, and you feel like, wow, Val Kilmer is telling the story. This movie kind of touched me on a personal level. For those of you who don't know, I'm currently working in healthcare. I see patients all the time that are stuff like construction workers, and they'll come and they'll be very depressed, and they'll say, I used to be a construction worker. I used to love working with my hands. I used to love creating stuff, but now I have chronic pain, or I have arthritis, or some other condition like that, and it prevents me from doing what I love to do. And that leads them into depression. For that reason, I was working at that hospital during the time I watched this movie, and this movie kind of connected to me on that way, where it's like, what if you take this craftsman, Val Kilmer, his craft is acting, and all of a sudden he's diagnosed with a disease that takes away his ability to do what he loves the most. And I will say, Val Kilmer in this movie takes it extremely well. Like, it's actually impressive the way he copes with this disease. It's something that you don't see that often. And obviously this documentary does show his moments where he's having breakdowns and all that stuff. But overall, what a brave guy in general. That's what I mean. I really got a newfound respect for Val Kilmer. A lot of the footage in this movie is Val Kilmer when he was a kid. Any kid who had a camera would go in front of the camera and do funny faces or try to make homemade movies. Val Kilmer, when he was a kid, he was very playful in front of the camera. And that's not just something that stayed when he was a kid. That remained throughout his whole life. Even when he lost his voice, he's on camera and his son is filming him, and he's doing these physical humor bits with his son and poking fun at him. It really shows that this guy just loves the craft. That's what I mean. I just have so much admiration for Val Kilmer. If I have to give one criticism with the film, this might not affect your average viewer, but for someone like me, I've always heard rumblings that Val Kilmer was difficult to work with on set. And they addressed that in this documentary, but in a bit of a superficial and one-sided way. I wish they dived a bit more into that, because it would have given him a bit more character, for lack of a better term, showing that he's so adamant about the craft of acting that he'll go out of his way to be a dick. just because at the end of the day what matters is the art. I wish we had more moments of him being a bit of an asshole on set. I feel like it would have developed his character a bit more, but then it's just basically a throwaway line in this movie where he's like, if someone says like, oh, people say he's hard to work with, but it's just because he loves the craft. I wish I would have seen that, if possible, given the footage. But overall, I thought Val was a pretty solid movie, as you would expect with an A24 movie. You can watch this movie on Amazon Prime. It's available there for free with a subscription. I just advertised Amazon. Woo! New low on this channel. Alright, next movie, Pig. A truffle hunter who lives alone in the Oregon wilderness must return to his past in Portland so he can save his pig, which has been kidnapped. The premise of this movie is pretty silly. It's basically Nick Cage alone in the wilderness, and someone kidnaps his pig. But he's not any kind of pig. The pig finds truffles and gives them to Nicolas Cage. I'm a little on the fence about this movie. This movie was getting rave reviews. And whenever a movie with Nicolas Cage comes out that's half decent, people are like, well, I forgot Nicolas Cage can act. And I'm like, guys, the guy can act. It's obvious. The guy has an Academy Award. The problem is he'll accept anything. So when you go into a Nicolas Cage movie, it can either be high art, it can be Kick-Ass, or it can be Color Out of Space, or it can be Joe, or it can be Pig. Or it can be like Redbox bad, like USS Indianapolis and movies like that. Season of the Witch. Just bad movies like that. In a way, he's kind of like how I regard M. Night Shyamalan, where M. Night Shyamalan, when you go into an M. Night movie, you don't know if it's going to be The Sixth Sense or Signs, or if it's going to be Lady in the Water or The Happening. Okay? It's always a crapshoot. Which is why I kind of like Nicolas Cage, I guess. That and his very unique acting style, which includes him screaming a lot. There's a bomb that's gonna go off, and you're gonna have to stop it! Oh, that was an awful impression, I'm sorry. But anyway, I like Nicolas Cage a lot as an actor. He's actually very versatile. Color Out of Space, which came out in 2020, for me anyway, given my region. Color Out of Space was one of my favorite movies of 2020. It was such a fun cosmic horror movie, and I didn't know what Pig was gonna be. I just knew it was about a guy who gets his pig kidnapped. I didn't know if it was gonna be like some bloody revenge horror movie. I wasn't really expecting some indie drama, but once the movie started, I was like, okay, I can go with this. The movie opens and it's beautiful. It's Nicolas Cage and his pig, and they're alone in the woods together. We're getting a sense for how Nicolas Cage lives in this environment, and it was pretty entertaining. And once we get into the story, I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Once it comes to Nicolas Cage uncovering his past, going into the seedy underbelly of Portland, Oregon, which is something I haven't really seen in a movie. Whenever we see like a seedy underbelly in a city, it's always something like Vegas or New York. Never as much Portland, Oregon, and I'm sure there's some seedy shit that goes on in Portland, Oregon. It's not all fine cuisine and hipsters. Where the movie kind of crumbles for me is, first of all, I thought this movie felt too long. Despite having a pretty short runtime, I thought there was a lot of filler in the movie. I wish the movie was more about Nicolas Cage being this cook that lives alone in the wilderness and makes stuff related to truffles, some pastries, or whatever he was making in the movie, and him uncovering his past to find his pig. Where the movie lost me is that there's this subplot that eventually becomes the main plot of Alex Wolff, and there's some family drama that occurs with Alex Wolff's character, and I feel like that was way less interesting than Nicolas Cage. I think Nicolas Cage in this movie actually gives his best performance probably since leaving Las Vegas. That's a pretty bold statement, but yeah, I think this is probably one of the best performances of his career. And whenever we strayed away from that, whenever they put the spotlight on Alex Wolff, I feel like I lost interest. But then you'd have scenes with Nicolas Cage again, and Nicolas Cage goes to this bakery that used to be his, but he sold it to someone else, and he walks in and he looks like shit. He's got the greasy hair, he's got the face full of blood, and he's all gross. And he walks in and he's just like, still got any baguettes? And the baker's just like, yes. And they give the baguette. I love food, by the way. Like, my other thing that I love watching other than movies is cooking shows. And I like the ones like Ugly Delicious on Netflix or Chef Show on Netflix, where it's people just talking about food in this high artistic regard. That's like, if you want to make me like a movie, have more of it, just make a movie like that. I'll love the movie regardless. I just wish this movie had more of that, because that's what I found more interesting, not so much the family drama thing. That's all I have to say about Pig. Thought overall was a pretty meh movie, but yeah, I wanted to like it more, but a lot of people are enjoying it. It has like a really high Metacritic rating right now. I just feel like it was a little I don't want to trash this movie. I know this movie tried hard. But I've heard people love this movie. I've heard people hate this movie. I suggest you guys at least give it a shot so you can formulate your own ideas about it. Last movie, if I can call it that, I'm going to talk about is Bo Burnham's Inside. Bo Burnham's Inside is a musical comedy that Bo Burnham wrote, directed, filmed, edited, and performed in his residence while he was in lockdown. Is this a movie? Is this a stand-up special? I don't know. I don't care. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to be honest. Singing comedy isn't really my cup of tea. It's not really my thing. When it comes to stand-up comedy, I like people like Bill Burr and Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock. Those are my kind of stand-up comedy. So some guy with a keyboard and singing funny songs, not really for me. Albeit, I'm not one of those people who hate on alternative comedy. Like, for the longest time, people like Carrot Top got hate for like doing prop comedy. I mean, a laugh is a laugh to me, okay? If it's from a shitty prop, who gives a shit, okay? Whatever. But, yeah, it's just musical comedy usually doesn't make me laugh, so to each their own. Humor is pretty subjective, and laughter is a pretty involuntary thing. That said, I thought Bill Burnham's Inside was pretty interesting, because was I slapping my knee in hilarity? No. This wasn't a Louis C.K. special to me where I'm on the floor gasping for air. That wasn't it to me. But it was a very relevant movie. Relevant in a way that it doesn't feel like forced. I was just complaining about the Purge movies and the previous movie and how they feel on your nose and how they feel like very preachy. Bo Burnham's Inside is not really that. He brings up some very relevant issues, but doesn't really tell you how to think about them. He basically just sums up how it's like to feel in 2020 during the lockdown. That's basically what it is, and he brings up very topical themes. Stuff like anxiety, loneliness, the internet's impact on us during that pandemic, and he pokes fun of all that, and it felt good. This movie, I saw it when the pandemic and the lockdown were still kind of going on-ish where I lived, and it felt good to just see someone go through the emotions that I was feeling as well during the pandemic. It felt like I wasn't alone out there and thinking what I was thinking during this pandemic, and that was very refreshing. I feel like his message in this movie was pretty universal. It's not something that only one group would understand. I feel like a lot of people are going to connect with this comedy special or film, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, even the way he performs. Usually, Bo Burnham's this very colorful guy, and he'll perform, and he'll be all outrageous. But in this movie, he feels a bit more grizzled, a bit more depressed. He has that long beard, and his face is a bit more, like, fatigued. It was a very relatable movie, and I feel like this is going to be a very relatable movie when it comes to our generation. And looking back at the pandemic in 10, 20, 30 years, this is going to be a time capsule, and it's going to be a very good one at that, of how people felt during the 2020 lockdown. This is probably going to be the most accurate reflection of that. Even though it's a silly comedy with a guy playing songs on his piano, I feel like it's a very important time capsule. And when I have kids, if I have kids, I'm still on the fence about that one. But yeah, if I have kids and they ask me what was it like during the coronavirus lockdown, I'm going to pop this in the DVD player, or if, I don't know, it's going to be on Netflix. Who knows if Netflix is going to be around in that time. But anyway, I'm going to just pop this in and show my kids this is what it felt like to be in the 2020 lockdown. Pretty interesting stuff. I thought this was a breath of fresh air. It was very fresh and new. Yeah, it's been a while since I saw something that fresh in a while, so congrats, Mr. Bo Burnham. You hit me in the feels. What a sweet spot to leave off this video. Guys, basically, if you haven't seen part 1, go check out part 1, but my more glowing recommendations here are F9, just kidding, Free Guy, Suicide Squad, In the Heights, Bo Burnham's Inside, Val, The Green Knight. I think those are the winners of the summer. If you had to condense it to a list, I'll put a list of the movies up here. Whoop! Here's a list of all those movies I just listed off. If you had to recap summer 2021 with movies, In the Heights, Suicide Squad, Free Guy, Val, Green Knight, and Bo Burnham's Inside. I did the homework for you. Now go watch these movies.